Binary trees. Maybe I should just start it with this. Look at this. We're going to learn about trees. This is so pretty. Welcome to the show. Hello. In this video, as much as I maybe have tried to avoid it, I am talking about shrubbery.
Oh, thank you.
And we're going to talk about trees, and we're going to talk about shrubs, and we're going to talk about files, because it's the gardening corner. Get your shovels out, put on your gardening gloves, because we're going to talk a lot about trees and shrubs. This is going to be a two-parter, because I dove real deep into the most basic structure of Urbit, which is a tree, how the file system is also a tree, and the file system in Urbit is so beautifully disciplined that you can take it a step further, basically allow Urbit to be completely transformed in what it's doing. So because it's such a big deal, fundamentally shakes things up, I am addressing it and trying to wrap my own head around it as I talk to you in this video. I don't know, buckle up, I guess. It's a big ride. So my name is Ben Brown, or nordus-mocwyl on Urbit. Recently, I've set up a fund that would allow the most hardcore of you to send me crypto money to motivate me to make more of these videos. Half of what I'm given goes to my favorite charity, Give Directly, just like it would for the Patreon for the Musician Podcast. Enjoy going in deep. We're gonna dig. We're gonna dig today. So, okay, enjoy. Good morning. It is a hot summer day in Texas. I can hear the cicadas. They're high-pitched, woof. Yesterday was crazy because of the chickens. So it first started with the smallest chicken, the one that we've named Snoop. He started to get bullied. So he's already the lowest on the totem pole. And the chicken, who should be his best friend, Martha, has decided that she doesn't want to be just second to last on the totem pole. So she's going to try to assert her dominance by pecking at and just making Snoop's life miserable. And so Snoop started to just avoid the other chickens and hide in the coop. And then he only really relaxed when we were around, and he kept on wanting to just follow us back to the house. We toyed around with the idea of him being inside, but it's birds ain't got any kind of control. You know what? You should stay with your flock, right? But it ended up escalating, and we ended up looking another day, and he had kind of gashes on his side, big open wounds, and so then that was just a step too far. Why did my phone turn off? He got injured, so we brought him into the house, and it's at first it was cute. I was actually just flipping through some videos and stuff. It's he's sleeping, and he's a big bird. It's funny, right? That's one thing. That's fine. But then yesterday afternoon, our other chicken, Ezri, she started to just act really lethargic and down, and there's this condition that chickens can get in where they can be egg bound. So an egg is up in there, but they can't get it out, and you have to give them an Epsom salt bath to relax. And so we brought Ezri inside last evening, and we're trying different bath things, and it's just totally have a tiny house farm here. Yes, I love them. They're great. It's just quite the insanity. They're outside right now, so they're fine. My goal with these Urbit videos are to do practical things that can be done right now on an Urbit, stuff that's useful, interesting, worthwhile, or just personally helpful. But there has been this extra development inside of Urbit that is so exciting and so fundamentally changing of Urbit that it is impossible to ignore, and I've definitely taken my time to try to understand it, but I wasn't expecting to make a video about it so soon, so soon in its life cycle, so soon of what it is, because it's still in the research phase, or alpha at this point. And that's a thing called Shrubbery, which is fun, I am Roger the Shrubber. And two little level things. You make a path down the middle. I'm going to have to pull up the clip from Monty Python, I think.
Is there anywhere in this town where we could buy a shrubbery?
Who sent you?
The knights who say ni.
There is a pestilence upon this land. Nothing is sacred. Even those who arrange and design shrubberies are under considerable economic stress at this period in history.
Did you say shrubberies?
Yes, shrubberies are my trade. I am a shrubber. My name is Roger the Shrubber. I arrange, design, and sell shrubberies.
No! No!
It doesn't even have horses. It's wild. Okay, that was a choice. Why do I feel like I need to talk about this now? Well, there was a call to developers to start making things. They've even released the first grant out of a trickle of grants for people to create shrubs for the shrubbery. So as those are coming out, I'm debating in my head, like, do I want to do this? Am I a person to do this? I've hung out with some of the guys making shrubs. I have not made a shrub. I am not a shrubber just yet, but I'm considering. I just don't know if it's a distraction or not, because it's like, I think there's too much of in technological space, there's too much of a temptation to not live right now, but to like live in the future. And like, I've been listening to enough talks from like the 60s and 70s and from like the very first early people doing computers to know that like we know where we're going, and we've known for a very long time, and it's insane that we aren't there. / are we ever going to get there? And so I don't know. There's a way of living your life like kind of like leaned forward, and it's like it's kind of exhausting, and it never really shows up, and it's like it's definitely not being like present in your current now. So I try not to think too far in the future, even though it's like that's something that I totally do. It's just I try to balance myself from those like thinking a little bit too far in the future and bring it back into like, what can I do today? What's possible right now? My topic here is going to be shrubbery. There is this video from Lambda Conference that I've watched quite a few times to try to understand what Liam is saying here. I'll link it somewhere. Shrubbery. It's a fun name. It's a really fun name. Oh, there's 2 bees in shrubbery. It's always good to have wonky bees. Wonky bees. Can I explain how it's a big deal? Despite like being scared of living in the future and tilting a little bit too forward, why would I bother talking about it? Why not just like sit back and let it play out? Well, because of its fundamental way that it changes things. Shrubbery has a way of unifying and eventually like usurping, like taking over what is currently already done in Urbit by these 2 things, like really deep down apps in your Urbit. Clay handles the file system. And then there's Gall. It manages apps. Gall has all these apps inside of it, and it manages their relationship, other things in the system or things outside of itself. A file system and like an app, we just might as well call it an app system. Why not? Shrubbery has the ability to just like just slurp them all up and be like, you know what, we don't have to have these anymore. And that's a really big deal. Like, it's hard to imagine what else is happening on a computer than the file system and like an app system. And if Shrubbery can actually, like get in here and change those things and make them obsolete, like that's a big deal. Course trees addressing.
Every Hoon expression is composed of nouns, atoms and cells. Furthermore, Hoon data and Hoon code are homoiconic, sharing the same representation. An interesting corollary of these facts is that every Hoon noun and every Hoon program is a binary tree. Each node in this binary tree may contain either an atom, in which case it has no children, or a cell, which has 2 children. Many possible nodes may be empty.
These videos are awesome. Nice little taste of the improved Hoon Academy, Hoon School stuff. So as a preamble, you're going to need to maybe hang on for a little bit. The absolute basic structure of anything and everything inside of Urbit is a tree shape. You can eventually just call it a tree. Boop. Binary tree. Here's a little representation. Branch off, branch off. This is where every single branch gets its like binary little additions. Oh, you can just keep on going. That's a nice clean one. Here's another representation that I think is like really fun. I don't know. When I first hear binary tree, I think of this. I think this is gorgeous. I think I want this on a t-shirt. I'm going to draw it like this. Trees. So hang on to your butts. First I'm going to make a tree. Bloop, like that. That's for making it look like a tree. I'm going to erase it in the end, but for funsies, maybe, whatever. At the end here, you can either have, like we call it an atom, but it's literally just a number. It can be the number 14. Let's find out over here in the dojo. Let's find out what the number for today's date is. So today's date gets represented here, 2024.8.9 gets represented in this like calendar time, right? But I can always make it pass through and get turned into a number like this. Let's see if it's any simpler. Just give it 2024 8.9. I don't know if it's going to be happy about that. It's okay. So we can take this number, 170, 141, 184, 501, blah, 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 blah. And then that could be the end of our Urbit tree. Didn't even really make a tree. We just started there. So the nodes can be either that, or you can decide, hey, I'm going to create a cell, and that cell is going to have like two of these numbers. And so in our little representation, that's just going to be like, okay, here's a cell. This node has just chosen to become a little cell, which is to say over here, 14 versus now number, right? Or if I want to pass it the long number, bingo. So this is saying this guy has decided to be a cell, and he's like, I have a position over here, and I have a position over here. Over here, I'm going to put in the number 14, and over here, I'm going to put in the number that represents our time right now. Boom, that is our very simple, like little, a tree. You can be like, you know what, I want this to be a little bit more complicated. How about instead of this guy terminating at a number, let's just say that this one should also be a cell. I want it to be, we're just going to start using terminology just now. And with now, I wonder if we can pass now through a ship. Okay, yeah, we can. So one of the things that we can convert now into is a ship name. If you want it to be represented in anything other than a number, you end up like pulling it through these like types, like these pre-created things of like, this is how you can interpret these numbers. So I have the name nordus-mocwyl, bingo. That is a ship. That is considered a pt type. I don't know exactly how to explain that. This at symbol, which is like at for atom, right? Like it's that makes sense. And so you can be like an atom. Well, with an atom, I want to give it a flavor. I want to give it an aura of a type. And so while the underlying thing is just a number, I can actually give it this extra kind of flavor, extra aura. And so you add things like pat-p in order to get a ship out of that number. Pat-da ends up getting a date out of that number. The star here, the tar, that is just giving me the most basic value. You want a default value out of these things. The flavor of time is a little bit different. Pat-dr, which is like hour 5, minute 3. Maybe it'll be more useful to send these things through add. So add is a hungry function. We're going to call a function by putting parentheses around it. So add, you're a hungry function. You want to eat these two things and put them together. So I'm going to add 5 hours to 3 minutes. And it ends up add ends up taking both of those numbers. It like actually reduces that like time. It's going to flip them down into just their number representation, their atom representation. And then it's going to add them together because it's set up in a way that those are like logically equivalent, like as you're adding these things up together. So what I can do is I'm going to pull it through the relative time again, date, relative date, DR, where DA is date absolute. So this is date relative. And there we go. So now we can add in 5 hours and 3 minutes together, get that number, and then pull that number, which is this number, pull that number through pt.1. Same process there. Here, I'm going to create a cell here. I'm going to create a cell of 5 hours and 3 minutes, and we're going to pull it through a cell of an atom and an atom, and that should end up giving us our two numbers. So what add ended up doing was add took 332.041.393. It's not point. These points are not like decimal points. These are like literally just commas. It's a German notation, so like Germans would understand this. That is just I don't know, just a little quirk. I think commas they're more useful in other kind of contexts. It means more things. Some other places. So add ended up eating, oh gosh, I don't know what it is. So it adds those two numbers together and get the new one. And then once you convert it through the right kind of type, you can see that it's neat because every single number can actually be seen as another kind of thing as long as you know how to move it through that direction. Here's my text, Nordbird, sometimes happens. So if I was to see this string of text, Nordbird, as a number, as the atom that's underlying it, it would be that. I wonder if it can be a pat-p. It can be a pat-p. They're so big. They're like weird comets. Yeah, you can pull it through time. It's a whole minute. It's over a minute. Almost two. that's I don't know. It's fun. Let's come over here and let's just like lazod _ Dazod. That's usually how you do a comment name. So now I have a tree. You go up here, you find out, hey, I actually hold two things. Okay, cool. There's the number 14 and another thing that's like, hey, I hold two numbers. And you go, oh, okay. So I have this, which is now represented as a comet. And then over here, I have now represented as that. Boom, there we go. Now we have like a complete tree. It's filled up all of its spaces, and that is a valid Urbit structure of data. Hold on to your butts. In the Urbit world, you can actually start to represent this by kind of like collapsing these things. Take this cell, node, represent it with these big old cells here. That one's represented. Take that cell here, represent it around this guy. Da-da-da. Yeah. I can still move things around, but over here we can see it as like this. Now represented as pat-p. Oh, nope, too soon. And then now, and close out the cell. Boom, we have our representation of a binary tree. It's like, it's fun to think of it as a tree, but practically when you see it in your Urbit, you're going to see it in this kind of way. And because there's so many trees and like you can have like cell after cell after cell after cell, when you get it back like this, it's just assumed the next thing is a cell. If it branches in that way, let's say that I want to go off the beaten path here and be like, you know what? I'm not going to terminate that cell as an atom. I'm going to decide that is a cell now. And that's one atom there. And then I'm just going to put the number 15 in here because who's going to stop me? And so now in this case, we'll just see how it plays out here. Now I want another cell, and I want to put 15 in it. And so then now the representation has kept in the cell because it's not a part of this like constantly branching. They say like branching to the right. Here's one thing in a cell of two things, which has one thing in a cell of two things, and one thing in a cell of two things, one thing in a cell of two things. When you have that, it makes things all fancy dancy. You can come in here, this Hoon School. That'd be good stuff to look at. The reason that I'm belaboring this is that like everything in Urbit is this. Everything. It can't be anything else. Either it's saying that I have two things, which is a cell, or it is a thing. It's either a thing or saying, hey, I have two things. That's the only things that are there. Everything is represented in this way. Everything. So whenever you go into your app, like the home app, and you go into your structure file, your SIR file, and you come into here, this is what you're doing. You're taking these most basic things. I'm just going to let the halo be there. It's fine. How long is it going to last? 15 minutes? I don't know. See that atom in the flavor of text? My tie doll. Atom in the flavor of a date. Absolute. That's what that is. And so you're taking these structures, these like basic things, you're creating these trees that represent their shape of another thing, and then you can like just keep on putting them inside of each other. And so if we come back over here, I can be like, I have a thing called an episode. It's a bunch of cells. So I'm just going to keep on creating cells as I need to add my items here. First item is going to be a path. And then I've got regular A text. I have a thing called a tape, another cell, so I can add tape, and then, another cell. And then like this thing I'm calling episode. Here, hold up. Back to building up these more complicated structures. So here I have defined an episode shape, an episode tree. Now I can just plug in, I can take another tree and I can be like, here is an episode. I can give you a big old number that can get pulled through this episode and it will give you all of these things in their proper space, in their proper shape, and in their proper structure. Very helpful. Something I have plugged an episode into is this pod to represent the podcast. Here's my pod tree. I don't even know how I don't know how a map looks in the I've already lost. This one's gonna be a cell. Season 1 and another value of episode 1 to my episode shape, right? And then here, episode number 2, and then another episode shape. And then here, I can add another one of those things, and I can keep on going. But here, I have season number 2, and that can have a branch that has episode 1 and an episode. And then here, okay, awesome. I'm glad I know this. I think that's what I'm seeing. And this one can be another season 3. This is my pod tree. This is my pod shape. I have been able to take these really simple things, construct an episode shape, plug that into my pod where I need it to be, and then like you can just keep building. So that's structures and things. Hee-haw. This is our trees. And our trees, it's the kind of thing that's like hard to keep in a human mind, but like totally possible in these minds. This brings us back to Shrubbery. So all this stuff, all this talk about trees just brings us back to going even deeper into the idea of like everything is trees. Trees and trees and trees. The like ultimate of it, Shrubbery. Trees inside trees inside trees. You zoom in and you got a tree. There's another tree inside that tree. Have you noticed that tree? There's a tree there. How many trees do you want? Shrubbery. All the way down. This is it. All right, cool. Let's talk about files and folders. So I dreamed up this way of seeing this. I'm gonna mess around with some folders, and I'm gonna introduce a thing called the namespace. I went over in a past video the discipline that Urbit takes as well as like totally affords when it comes to naming things in your computer. And that is because it is going to start with the name of my ship, nordus-mocwyl. Okay, let's go into Urbit. So here's our nice little fake Urbit. So we just start off with the name of a ship. Start off with their name. There's a little identity. We know now that it's just a number. But from here on out, I will now be able to name files, and they will be completely unique. Inside your ship, you're going to have things called desks. you're always going to have to start off with like a base desk. So I will go ahead and create that base desk. But we also have home. So we'll stick with this because we kind of know it and we're kind of moving around with it. So I have this home desk. Inside the home desk, I'm going to have a number. This is going to be a revision. This is going to be anytime I press save on home, this number will go up. Actually, we can discover. I just made like a tiny little change to home and we can see where we're at. So this is like a path to a file, a path to some information. We start off with the ship name. This happens to be our Comet. We have our desk. We have our revision number. And then we go through the files until we get to, let's get back to Flurbit. Nordus, I have home, revision number. Inside of here, finally, I have home.hoon file. Home also has every single version of itself is kept track of. And so everything is accounted for, even if you delete it. Say I come back here in 64 and I'm like, okay, I don't want to hold on to this anymore. And I can delete it. There will still be a representation of 64. It'll just be, I don't have it. Everything is accounted for. Like this is the discipline that we're talking about. So then if you get inside of Urbit, if you're inside its name space, like this particular way of doing things, then every time you reference any file, either on your computer or anywhere in the world, you will be referencing one and only one thing. It will never be swapped out. It'll never be replaced. Because of that, you have this kind of confidence and agreement in that space. I can never come back in, go get into 65 and alter this file in the 65th version of home. I can come in and delete it, but I can't change it. If somebody was to come in and reference like, hey, like version 65 is the bomb, I'm going to reference this thing and, I can have a copy of it and it's like, hey, here's this thing that was here. It will never change. It will never be different, never be swapped out. Like it's in like this typical file system. It's like I have stuff inside of this kind of July file folder. That changes all the time. If I was to reference that on a different computer, like it's not going to stay the same. It has no discipline, and this computer doesn't have a name. It has like an IP address. The files on it are not unique in that way. Things can float around and change, and nothing can rely in the same way on what's on my computer. Generally you don't see this stuff. So just like move that to trash. That's the namespace. It really is just your ship, a collection of files called a desk. Just inside the desk is going to be a version of what it is. And then everything else. It's so simple. Why would it be any different? Almost moronic. So I need to bring this home so I can finish it. No pun intended. Let me pull us back over to Shrubbery. Well, first off, of course, Urbit is going to represent these things as a tree. Like in the Urbit space, this is going to be a tree. Another big old tree, It's just trees, everywhere trees. In Shrubbery's reimagining. It's like leaning in on this namespace. It's being like, hey, this is all that you need. Like this can actually free you from separating the idea of files and folders and apps. Gosh, I think this is a whole nother level, and I've already crossed the threshold. I'm gonna go bring in the chickens. I'm gonna close all this down, and then I can come back and I will talk about how Shrubbery ends up modifying this, giving rules to what's happening to make it more useful, and totally obliterates the distinction between files and applications. So I'm just gonna have to come back and do that because those chickens are probably all kinds of hot. Yeah, thanks for checking it out. We'll get back to it soon. It might end up being the same video, but we'll see. Anyways, yeah, okay, bye.